Welcome to the Small Business Sisterhood podcast. I'm your host, Pepper Makepeace, an online business strategist for female solopreneurs and side hustlers, and the founder of the Small Business Sisterhood, an online membership community serving small business owners in the first stages of business. Join me as I go behind the scenes with female entrepreneurs, revealing the struggles, strategies, and inspiring stories of these amazing women. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded women in a supportive online community that helps you stay focused, motivated, and accountable as you build your business, check us out at smallbusinesssisterhood.com. Today we're talking to Stacey Harris, founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency called Uncommonly More. She brings her decade of digital marketing experience paired with her background in audio engineering to lead her team in supporting clients in launching and growing a podcast. Thank you, Stacey, for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you and learn more about your business. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about your business and how you got started.
So those are two very big questions because my business now is not at all aligned with how I got started. I currently own Uncommonly More, which is a digital marketing agency focused mostly on strategic podcast production. We help podcasters who are using their podcast as their sort of content marketing strategy to build and grow their shows so they actually get business results, because so much of the podcasting content out there is really geared towards what I call sort of B2C content, sort of a show that's looking to monetize through ad revenue and things like that. And the strategy for that is different because the business model is different. But podcasting as a whole tends to get lumped into shows like that. You know, everybody wants to be Serial and, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard and those kind of shows, when in reality, most business owners who want to build a show to get business results, to grow trust and relationship with potential clients, don't actually need the same kind of results that like a Serial kind of podcast does. And so the strategy and the process can be wildly different. So we really help focus on the strategic production of those kind of shows so people can get real results. And honestly, mostly to give some context to the dream of dream download numbers that occasionally come out as like, I want 10,000 people to listen to my show. And I'm like, great. How many clients do you work with a year? 10? We don't really want 10,000 people listening to your show.
Right.
So we focus mostly on there, but my background is really mostly in marketing. I started my business 9 years ago in 2011, mostly as a reaction to being a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years and really, really wanting to work, but not in a way I had ever worked before. And so I did the thing that even in 2011 was dangerous, which was Google how to work from home. It's worse now than it was then, but it wasn't great then. And I kind of put one foot in front of the other, and I started a VA business, and that evolved into social media and strategy and consulting, and really building sort of all of that out under my personal brand. And then 2.5 years ago, I was like, I'm going to really support my clients the way I want to support my clients. I have to have more than me helping. And so we launched the agency, and now we have a certain amount of clients who we do high-level marketing support for, and those spots are full. And then the rest of our clients and the space that we have as we continue to grow is in the podcast production realm. Awesome.
So my understanding is you kind of really shifted your business at some point. Tell me about that process and what made you do that.
I think I've shifted my business at lots and lots of points. And I think that is probably my favorite thing about what I do. Is, I joke a lot that aside from my business, which I've owned for 9 years, I'd never had a job more than 11 months. I've had so many jobs. Aside from my business, my podcast, which I've had 7 years, my husband and my child, I'm wildly commitment phobic. I don't know how I ended up being at this point in my life and having these long-term commitments, because up until they started, I was like, no, 11 months is too long. And so I've had lots of experiences and lots of adventures. And I think part of the reason I've stayed with this so long is I get to evolve it and shift it and change it whenever I want. And that's been really sort of life-giving through the process. And I think so often we approach business or launching an offering or launching a podcast or trying a marketing technique or working with a coach or investing in a program as this one thing that's going to change everything. And suddenly that will be the thing that stays that way forever and ever. And that's really not the way it works. It's just sort of shifting and evolving one thing at a time. I frequently sort of refer to my life as a evolution and not a revolution. I tend to try not to burn things down and then start over. Instead, I sort of go, okay, this is working. Could we lean a little further this direction? And I think moving through this sort of whole adventure with that mindset and with that question in mind, I was like, how, which way do we lean that's going to be more fun for right now? Massively helps with little imperfect action kind of moments, which are actually what change everything.
Right. And I think a lot of people think that when they start a business, they have to have it all figured out, and you have to, exactly what will be the perfect business for you and the perfect model for being successful. And if you don't get it all figured out right away, then you're going to fail. And I think I love that. And I'm with you on that. My business has shifted many, many times as I change and my situation changes and my interests change. And I think that's the beauty of the flexibility of owning your own business, because you can do that.
Yeah. And even the needs of your clients, part of the reason I launched the agency we officially launched January of 2019, but I actually took on our first agency client and first agent team member, sort of fall of 2018, before we had officially moved into the agency model. And that really stemmed from, I had been building marketing strategies for clients, and then they were handing them over to teams who didn't really understand how to execute a marketing strategy. And so there was a hole. There was this disconnect. They were never really getting the results I wanted them to get because we were sort of leaving them hanging. And so oftentimes I think as much as we want to evolve something because it feels better, I think looking at the market and looking at your clients and are they getting the results that they need? And if they're not, great, what do I need to evolve? And that only happens once you start putting something out there. All of the ideal client avatar research in the world is not as good as actually working with clients. And so some of my best client experiences have actually been horrible client experiences because they were really, really informative about what I wanted my business to look like, how I wanted to work, and the kind of boundaries and contracts and things I needed to have in place to make sure that I was serving my clients at a really high level while also taking care of me. And now at this point, my team. It's funny how much easier it is to hold boundaries when it's your team member on the other side of those boundaries from a client and not you. I will say that. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes from you don't know what you don't know. And so until you put something out there, some business, some offer, some piece of content, you just don't have enough data to make a perfect decision.
Right. Well, and I think there's comfort in that too, as a new business owner, where you start somewhere and then that you can down the line shift it and adjust to your clients, adjust to yourself, and that's okay. And I think I find a lot of comfort in that I'm not stuck in something permanently for the rest of my life. I think that's why we're entrepreneurs. We don't want, like you're talking about your commitment phobia. I think we like that flexibility, and that's why we are what we are. And I think that's really comforting to know that we're not stuck.
Absolutely. And honestly, I didn't know I wanted the things I want now for my business because I didn't know they existed at the beginning. I actually started my business. You want to talk about not knowing. So I started my business. Again, I've been a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years. I am not built for it. I missed the part of my brain that functioned when I worked, but I didn't want to work a regular job. I did want to be available to my son. I did want to be a part of going and doing class mom stuff and being able to be home from when he got home from school, and I wanted to build something that allowed me some flexibility to do those things. Now, lesson learned, I did not build that in those first 2 years. I built things that made me work 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, which is a whole other lesson I can talk about. Just made me really have a boss I didn't like, which unfortunately was me.
Right.
But I had no idea. And so I seriously, I looked online and I was like, oh, I could do admin work. I've done admin work in a lot of different places. I absolutely have this experience. Let's start there. And so I started a VA business and I ran that for about 12 months. I was successful. I had a full client list. I made good money. And the idea was like, I would pay for my son's education and I would pay for family vacations. And that would be that's what that extra money coming into the family would allow for. And, fast forward 4 years from there, we retired my husband from his job and he came and worked for me. Fast forward to now, so 9 years later, and my husband is a stay-at-home dad. He occasionally helps me out with the company stuff, but he mostly runs my house and really my life anytime it doesn't involve business. He handles the school stuff and he does those things. And I didn't know that any of that was something any of us in our family wanted, much less me. We've moved to a different state since then. Like, I didn't know any of those things were possible. The idea of building an agency wasn't on my radar until I just put one foot in front of the other and was like, let's see what this thing does. And I think that, it's really hard to make lifelong decisions at the beginning of your business because you'll figure so much out as you experience it and as you get exposed to people who have done different things and tried different things and had different levels of success and achieved different goals or whatever. That's when you really become aware of what's possible, especially if, like me, I was raised by, my dad was a police officer. My mom was a detention officer. I was raised very much so in a, like, you go get a job with the city and then you get a pension kind of environment. There were no entrepreneurs in my life.
Right.
And so just start moving and see what shakes out. You'll be amazed what kind of like adventures you'll run into.
So do you have kind of a process that, like, do you regularly evaluate where things are and what you'd like to do more of or less of, or like lifestyle things, or like, do you have a process for that?
Absolutely. So this full complete credit goes to my friend and my client and my coach. Her name is Tara Newman. She's got a podcast called The Bold Leadership Revolution. She's also got a membership community called the Brave Society. And inside of the Brave Society, which I am a member, we do a thing called the CEO Debrief. And we do it every Friday. She does it live on a call twice a month. And I'll be honest, that's when I'm most likely to have done this, is when we do it together as a group. And I really love it because she's got some questions in there and you can check it. She's got it up on her website. She's got a free option where you can get some of the questions we do. We do review, but one of the things that I really like that I always really hate in the moment is, what are you tolerating this week? And it's a really important question that she asked there. And I think when I started asking myself that question 3 or 4 years ago now, that has been probably the biggest indicator of when it's time for me to make a move. Not so much as like, oh, what's lighting me up and what's really exciting and what's easy. No, what am I tolerating? What is fine? It's not bad. It's not burning. It's not, going horribly awry. It's just there. And I like that question because I think a lot about it. If you learn to walk with a rock in your shoe, you don't know what it's possible to feel like to walk without a rock in your shoe. And so when you start thinking about that, tolerate, that's the rock in your shoe. And it seems fine because it's always been there. But until you're like, I don't actually love this, you go, oh, well, let me take this out and see what happens. And usually on the other side of that is this is what lights me up. It's because I removed that thing that I was tolerating. And so that process with Tara has probably been the most structured way that I've looked at sort of what's working and what's not working and when it's time to make a change. Especially in these last couple of years, and honestly, especially in 2020, I think it's amplified all of those things that we are tolerating as we've had no excuse not to really take stock of what's happening in our lives. I mean, I've been applying this, especially on the personal side of my life, to like my house. Okay, so if I have to spend this much time in my house again, These are the things I'm tolerating. And so I had to buy a new sofa because I was tolerating my old sofa. Because we were just never home and it didn't matter. And so I think that structure is the one I would most recommend people like check out and try. And it's probably the piece that keeps me both personally and professionally in line with my comfortable evolution instead of a sort of roller coaster of like burn it down, build it up, burn it down, build it up.
Mm-hmm. So once you just like identify the thing that you're tolerating in your business, how do you then go from that realization to kind of what do you do in your business then? Like, what's your next step?
I change it. I mean, I think oftentimes we're looking for the formula we can buy or the person we can hire or the, you know, the magic pill that changes the thing, the blueprint that changes it all and makes it easier. But honestly, I think when you see the thing that you're tolerating and you don't want to tolerate it anymore, you stop tolerating it and you find a change. I think the biggest misnomer, and I think the thing that gets sold too often, especially in this sort of quote unquote online business space, is that like you're just one like credit card swipe away from just all your problems being gone, when in reality is it takes action. And so I see the thing I'm tolerating and I go, great, what are my options? What are my alternatives? How do I shift this? How do I change this? And sometimes it's a big change, but 99 times out of 100, it's a really small change. It's okay, so somebody on the team needs to do this, or does this actually need to happen at all? So, like, that's always the first question. It's great. Can I just delete this? Like, is this just the thing we don't do anymore? That'd be great. And sometimes it is more often than I think we give it credit for. And we make the change. I think, again, I'm always looking for, instead of hiring or paying or building a new system or, you know, doing a lot of work, is there just a simple fix for this of like not doing it, or I do this an hour later than I usually do, or whatever the thing is, depending on the toleration, you know, the item we're tolerating. But I think my first step is always to look for the simplest fix. What's the easiest way to make this not a thing?
Right. I love that because you're right. Sometimes we do stuff that we really just don't need to do. And whether it's like you think you have to be on all the social media platforms and it's killing you because you're trying to do everything. Instead, you could, if your audience is in only one or two places, then only doing that, like that, then you can let go of all that other stuff that you were doing, and that's the easy fix. And I think we get kind of caught up in this idea of the way it's supposed to look or the way it's supposed to be or what we're supposed to be doing, and then it's not necessarily what's going to best serve us and our clients and our business.
Absolutely. And we talk about this with clients all the time when it comes to their podcast is, oh, I heard such and such and I really like that. Or, oh, this doesn't feel like it's working. Like, great, let's try something new. I mean, I've been podcasting for 7 years. We'll release episode 500 in October, the middle of October. And here's the deal. My show doesn't listen like it did episode 1 or 100 or 200. And not because one episode I made a change and like we changed the whole show. No, because month to month, week to week, quarter to quarter, whatever it may be, I'll go, hey, we should try this. What if this little change changes how people listen, or, you know, I want to try this. I had interviews. I did 2 episodes a week for the first, I want to say 3 years of the show. And then one week I was just like, what if we only did 1 episode this week? Let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. And that's what we did. We just took action on the idea and tried it. And I think we spend so much time looking at how do I make a change, and really it's one easy step. Change it. Do the thing. Try the thing. See what happens. And if it doesn't work and you want to go back, that's cool too. Doesn't mean anything about you. It meant you tried it and you didn't love it and now you're doing a different thing. And that's awesome.
Yeah, there's so much benefit to the just experimenting and not overthinking everything, just trying it out, and then you have the option to go back or do something else or whatever. But that experimenting mindset of just, you know, let's see how it goes. That's okay. It's not going to all fall apart if you stop, you know, posting or going 2 episodes on your podcast every week. It doesn't make your podcast just fall apart, right? So it's I think something that we forget is an option sometimes, where we can just experiment.
And it's funny because it's, I think it's one of the big draws of being an entrepreneur and being your own boss is you get to do whatever you want when you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't take advantage of that very often.
Right?
We don't show up for like hey, this is my podcast. This is my social media feed. And here's the deal. You want to know the thing I often learn when I go and I start doing less, when I show up on less social channels, or I do less podcast episodes, or I make myself less available to a client, it gets better.
Mm.
Because when I do show up for that client, or when I do put the time into that one podcast episode, or I'm now focused on just these 2 social media channels instead of 5 different social media channels, I'm showing up for them better and with more intentional, strategic content, value, conversation, whatever the thing there is. So it's better. And the people who are showing up to be on the receiving end of that, the people who are watching the story on Instagram or listening to that one podcast episode a week, or showing up for the client call because I'm not taking every little text message between 2 coaching calls or whatever the relationship may be, in the business model you're in, they show up and they're there to take advantage of the time you've given them because now they understand what the container is. And I think we so often, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, don't let this sound like I figured this all out. No, this is something I struggle with every week. But when we really hold those boundaries, and generally I would say 80% of the time, we're the only one uncomfortable when the boundary is set. Even though we make it seem like we're going to have insulted everyone involved. Like my podcast listeners will hate me if I stop doing 2 episodes a week. It's just not true. They don't care. Here's the deal. They're not paying attention. And I think that's how we collect data. Let's just see what happens. Last year, for the first time, I had been on retreat in Tulum, Mexico, which is, if you ever have a chance to go on retreat in Tulum, Mexico, 100% go. It's beautiful. I love Tulum so much. Anyways, now that the Chamber of Commerce of Tulum is going to hire me, I got back and I was zonked. I was absolutely beat because I had just been through this experience that was really sort of expansive for me and really looking at in the face the fact that the thing that I had built wasn't working as well as I wanted it to. And so I was like, what happens if I don't do a podcast for a month? If I just stop? Because I didn't feel like I had anything to say, if I'm honest. And so I did. And I kept promoting the show. At that point, I had done 400 and some odd episodes. And so it's not like I didn't have anything to promote. So we kept promoting the show. And do you want to know what happened? I had the exact same amount of downloads that month that I had any other month. Because we still promoted the content that existed.
Right.
But I didn't have to think of anything new. I got to create space to relax. It came up again for one of our clients this year. Is taking maternity leave. She's getting ready to have a baby later this month. And we were like, cool, let's actually stretch out some replay content so that you've got a little extra time on the other side of your maternity leave to not have to be creating. And so we mixed in reruns with some fresh stuff she pre-batched. The same thing happened earlier this month. We had a client who was like, I just need space. And we were like, cool, let's go look at strategically what episodes we could roll in here. And we're actually using her taking a sabbatical from her podcast as a way of her teaching her audience the importance of a principle she teaches a lot called the slow tango and taking space for your life and your growth and the things you need. And so we're actually, again, doing less, and it's having a major impact on the work and how it's being received. And it's actually helping her listeners and her clients by doing less. And I think, A, that's what happens when you strategically build content. B, that's what happens when you get support and help and take what you need, whether that's on your own or with the support of a coach and a VA or whatever those things are. And C, it's that reinforcement of more is not always better. The same client, her name is Allison Crow. She talks a lot about more is not better, better is better. And it comes up in my mind a lot as I'm going, well, I could just add this one more thing. I could just, if we could also do this for the client, or I could talk about this in that podcast episode, or if I just send one more email or one more story, and I'm like, nope, that's just more for the sake of more. More is not better, better is better. How about I just make these 3 podcasts better, or these 3 emails better, or this 1 Instagram post better, or whatever it is, or this 1 client deliverable better, instead of saying, I'm also going to add on 6 more things you don't need. Because then we end up in like TV infomercial, but wait, there's more kind of land. And nobody wants what comes after, wait, there's more. I don't want 2 of the crappy things you're trying to sell me. That's not helpful.
Well, it devalues the main thing to begin with. So it's like, is that not worthy enough for my money? So you have to add on all this other crap that I don't care about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually have a couple of friends with membership businesses that they've both kind of needed to take some time off, and they did. And it was in both instances, they came back from that and actually had more new subscribers and new people in their audience after they took time off. And it's kind of counterintuitive, I think, that, less is sometimes better, and it really can energize your community if you give less sometimes. And it's a fascinating thing that happens.
You're absolutely right. I ran a membership site for 4 years, and I really loved it. And about year 2, I realized we had gotten to the point where we had literally hundreds of trainings in this community. And I was like, we have to delete stuff. We have to remove it, because what was happening is every time somebody logged in, every time somebody signed up, they were just overwhelmed. There were so many choices that they couldn't pick what they wanted to do. And so they would just shut down. That saying around a confused mind says no. That's a real thing. It's a cliche for a reason. Right. And so I think, with our content, with our memberships, with our offerings, with our coaching packages, with our service packages, whether you offer a done for you or a consulting or whatever the model is, look at, like, is this all totally necessary, or am I trying to convince me that it's valuable enough I can sell it to somebody? Because oftentimes why we're adding more is not because we're like so confident they need more. It's because we're not confident they'll pay for the central thing. And the same is true again with podcasting. We put out more episodes because we're like, if we just keep telling them more, they'll think the show is good. Well, no, just make the episodes you're producing, whatever number. Maybe you want to do seasons and you're going to do 12-week seasons, and you're just going to do 2 seasons a year. Cool. Make those episodes worth listening to. Take them through whatever story or journey or lesson they need to have to get the results your show is promising them. Right.
Yes, that's a very valuable lesson, I think, as we kind of go through the regular motions of life and business, of just really learning that to kind of hone things down and not do the infomercial. But it does kind of, but I think, new entrepreneurs, there's a lack of confidence, a lack of self-confidence, because there's a lack of experience. And I think that experience, just by the act of doing anything in your business, you're learning, you're growing, and you can then shift and change. And it's such a valuable lesson as we grow.
Well, and here's the deal. I don't really have any more confidence in the decisions I'm making now 9 years in than I did the first year. I think we all hold on to this idea that, like, if I just get far enough down the road, suddenly I'll be confident. No. Like, that is an illusion. And so we just have to keep making our best next decision. Don't worry too much about 3 decisions from now. Just make the best decision with the information and the data you have now. And as you keep moving, you'll get more data and use that data. And like I said, that's why I love the CEO debrief, because it's such an important checkpoint for what data do I have? How do I feel about said data? What's next? Right. And, building in it, when you start thinking about everything you're doing as sort of like, what's the next best decision with the data I have, I think it takes some of the weight off of the life-changing decisions that are around every corner. Because seriously, you don't have any more confidence 10 years in. You're still like, will anybody buy this? I know a lot of people have. I know I run a multi-6-figure business, but what if now I literally said this to my coach. I'm going to totally call myself out. Tara will be so proud. I literally said this to Tara in a coaching call not 2 weeks ago. I'm like, what if this has worked for 9 years and this is the year it stops working? Like, first of all, we only have evidence that this works. But it is proof that I have no more confidence than I did in year one. Because I was like, what if nobody ever buys this thing? Well, now lots of people have bought lots of things, and I still am like, but what if nobody? I currently have full client lists in certain parts of my business and new clients coming in all the time in other parts of my business. But what if now is when it all just, craps out?
Right.
It's
You
never
probably have
ending.
different tools now to deal with that stuff that comes up, right? I mean, that's...
Yes, I will say the data of the thing I remind myself of the most often is I only have evidence that it works out.
Mm.
Win, lose, or draw, I only have evidence that at the end of the day it works out.
Mm-hmm.
I might not enjoy how it's working out right in the moment. Okay?
Right.
It's definitely not all magic and wonder.
It might not be what you planned, but it did work out.
It's almost never what I planned.
Right.
Certainly not how I planned.
Yeah.
But it always ends up working out. We figure it out. We win or we learn. That again, that cliche is a cliche for a reason.
Right.
But I think that it's important. I feel like it's definitely my job as somebody who is almost 10 years in and still has the days where I'm like, no, it doesn't work. There's no way this works. To be like, there's not going to be a moment where suddenly you're perfectly confident and you're perfectly ready and you have the exact right amount of money and you have nope. It is a moving target, friend. Like there's going to be new versions of that. So just be building. The best thing you can do is be building those skills and those support pieces, whether it's coaches or biz besties or in your, friends in your personal life or life partners or whatever it is, that when you're going, I'm 9 years in, what if this is the year it stops working and everyone figures out that I'm just funny and charming and not actually good at this? They go, except you are, because look around and you're like, okay, yeah, I get that I'm good at this, but like, what if I'm not good at this anymore? They're like, is that a thing? Is it? Because it's probably not. I think that's probably the most important business asset we can come up with is those people who go, is that actually true?
Right.
Because it's almost never is.
Right. Yeah, the power of that community around you to call you out on your stuff is really helpful.
Because we're terrible at doing it for ourselves.
Exactly.
I'm occasionally I'll be like, oh wait, yeah, this is definitely, but it's because I'm like 30 days into the terrible thing. Whereas if I just phone a friend and I'm like,
right,
so this is what I think, they can go, okay, well that's ridiculous, Stace, but thanks for calling.
Right.
I refuse to participate in this ridiculous conversation, but okie dokie.
So you're 9 years, almost 10 now into your business. Like looking back when you first started, would you have done anything differently? Was there any advice you have for new entrepreneurs?
I think my advice for anyone starting anything new, a new business, a new podcast, a new marketing strategy, a new, partnership, whatever it is just do it. Do it and collect data. Just go. Put one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about 6 steps from now. Just take these first couple. And you will learn and you will evolve and you will figure it out. I think I'm probably just now getting to a point where I don't have an attachment to knowing exactly what my business is going to look like in 5 years. Now, I can tell you exactly what I want to do in the next 2 to 3 years. I do have a big picture strategic plan because it's part of how I'm making decisions now. But I'm less white knuckly about it. I'm less like, okay, on October 21st, 2023, this is what my business will look like. Maybe, probably not, because I will learn things in the next 3 years that change what I actually want it to look like, inevitably. Right. But if you can just give yourself some space to strategically move forward, make a plan, execute the plan, review the plan, make a new plan. Just keep doing that over and over again, and you'll end up somewhere great.
Absolutely. I love that. You are just full of awesome wisdom over your 10 years of entrepreneurship. You have so much to share with everybody. I appreciate you talking to us about all of that and giving us some courage to just kind of keep trying and keep experimenting and shift as we go.
Of course. I love getting to do this because also in 10 years from now, when I listen to this episode and I go, I knew nothing, it'll be super fun.
Yeah. So any new projects or things that you're doing right now that you want people to know about?
Right now, we are currently working with, like I said, podcasters who are podcasting as part of growing their business. So if you're somebody who is at the beginning and you're looking to get started with podcasting, we have a very cool 5-day free training called Launch Your Podcast. It's a great way to get a look at what tech you actually need and a bunch of tech you don't actually need. And more importantly, making some of those important decisions that, again, I think so often we skip around who do you want to listen? What is the purpose of your show inside of your business? Like, what is the business model of your show? All of those pieces. And we actually end it with the sort of bullet points and outline of your actual podcast launch strategy. Like, here's what actually you need to do it. And that's over at uncommonlymore.com/launch your podcast.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I think podcasting is so much fun. It's one of the most fun things I do in my business. And I think not everybody should do it, but a lot of people should take that leap and go for the podcast because it can really be a lot of fun and do a lot for your business. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And, I actually highly encourage people who maybe don't know if a podcast is right for them, but are thinking about doing more interviews like this. They want to be regularly going on other people's shows. Check out the Launch Your Podcast training still, because having things like that kind of mic and that kind of who do I want listening and what are the goals of me doing this, those kind of things in place makes it really helpful to get podcast interviews that are actually impactful for your business. And that's one of my favorite ways to recommend for people to test whether a podcast works for them is go be on other people's podcasts and see if those podcast audiences and those podcast listeners resonate with what's happening in your business. Because if they do, then the people who you work with are podcast listeners. And now you have data to make the decision over whether a podcast might be right for you. And it's way easier to show up and be on other shows when you feel like you've got a little bit of professionalism under your belt as far as like understanding the machine of it all. And I will say selfishly, as a podcaster in the past who has had guests, don't anymore, but when I did, it's so much nicer to have a podcast guest who shows up and knows what the heck this whole machine is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so nice. That's why podcasters like interviewing other podcasters. It's because they understand what's happening. And so even if you're not looking at starting your own show, it can be really helpful to go through that content and have, again, just a basic understanding of what's all involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And tell me your favorite social platform and what's your handle there?
My social platform of choice for work is Instagram. So you'll find me over at the Stacey Harris or Uncommonly More. The agencies at Uncommonly More, my personal brand sort of stuff is over at the Stacey Harris. And I'm those two things absolutely everywhere. But I'll be honest, my actual platform of choice is TikTok because have been wildly sucked into it. I have yet to create content there, which is, I think, part of the reason I love it so much is because I don't actually work in that one platform.
Right.
But I find it just utterly irresistible and a total way to just lose hours of your day if you do not turn that little thing on your phone that goes, you've been doing this for 30 minutes. Might be time to shut it down.
Good to know.
We all have it. I think it's important that we are honest about it.
Yes, I had TikTok on my phone for like a day and I realized how it sucked me in and I immediately then uninstalled it because I was losing time. So
you make much better life choices than I do.
Well, no, only about TikTok maybe.
Because now I just go like, okay, I've done everything I have to do. It's the end of the day. I'm going to lay here and mindlessly watch TikTok for 30 minutes and then I can do my wind down stuff for bed. But it is this place where just like my brain can shut off and I can laugh, which in the last 6 months certainly has been something wildly important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad you have TikTok.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stacey. It's been really fun talking to you and learning from you, and I appreciate your time and being on the podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me, and I hope I get to talk to you again.
Thank you, Stacey, for talking with us today. You can find out more information about Stacey and a link to her website in the show notes for this episode at smallbusinesssisterhood.com/22. I hope you found this episode useful and inspiring. If you did, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.